بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الصلاة والسلام على سيد الأنبياء والمرسلين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. اللهم لا سهل إلا ما جعلته سهلا وأنت تجعل الحزن سهلا إذا شئت. آمين. So it looks like today, inshallah, will probably be our last day of going over the review. Doesn't look like we have too much left. Honestly, I don't even think it'll take the full hour, inshallah. And then from Friday, we can go over like the 3 discussions we have remaining that we didn't get a chance to even talk about at all in our first half of the 30th. The discussion about like the different qira'at and, what are they and how could we prove that they're considered Quran and so on and so forth. The abortion discussion, which came up in Surah Al-Takwir, which we didn't even touch on, unfortunately, and also in Surah Al-Takwir is the وَمَا تَشَاءُونَ إِلَّا أَن يَشَاءَ اللَّهُ, the whole discussion about free will and man's ability to make his own decisions, but at the same time, so there's something that called fate that we believe in. So inshallah, we'll talk about that on Friday. Today, inshallah, we're starting from Surah Al-Buruj, but there's one thing that we had skipped from Surah Al-Inshiqaq because we had run out of time. So inshallah we can start from there, which is just some basic ahkam of sajdatul tilawa. So as all of you know, that of course there's certain ayat in the Quran in which doing the sajda is wajib. That upon reading the verse, then you would have to do sajda. So looking at just a Center for Felicity, something that you guys have gone through, alhamdulillah, is very, really great work in all honesty. That he says from page 108, the prostration of recital, sajdatut tilawa. The prostration of recital is mandatory, meaning it is wajib. So it would be sinful to not do it. Yet it can be delayed unless the verse is recited in the prayer. So it's not wajib ala al-fawr, it is wajib ala al-tarahi. That's the term, meaning that although it becomes wajib on you, you don't have to immediately fulfill this wajib act. You could do it at any convenient time. Of course, it's best not to delay it. And yeah, it can be delayed unless the verse is recited in the prayer. And then he speaks about it a bit in the footnotes where he says that if the verse is recited in the prayer, you would have to do it right then and there. I think he says maybe 1 to 3 ayat can be read, something like that. But again, like if you were to read the sajda ayah and then you read like one ayah forward, then it won't you won't be sinful or something. Of course, it's still best to just read the ayah and then immediately go into the sajda. What else? If a person does not, let's say a person they read the sajda ayah and while they're praying, and then they forgot to do the sajda, and then they're not allowed to make it up outside of the salah. They would have to there's literally no way to make it up at that point. There are 14 different verses and then he lists the surahs that they're mentioned in. That's on page 109. So there's 14 different verses according to the Hanafiya. The other madhahib, they have there's 18, and they have some other numbers, some other ayat that they consider to be also that would require the sajda to be done. This was definitely something that I wanted to mention, is that one prostration suffices for the recital of a verse of prostration multiple times if that verse is repeated in the same sitting. Meaning, I think we'd give the example of a hifz kit, that if a student is memorizing Iqra Bismi or Surah Al-Inshiqaq, for example, then if he never heard of the ayah, he's just trying to memorize it for his sabak tomorrow, so he reads it 15 times. He's just sitting on his bed in his room or something, and he reads the ayah 15 times, because that would be considered one majlis. He's just sitting in his room and he read the ayah 15 times, therefore he has to simply make one sajda for all those 15. If, however, he's sitting in his room, he leaves, he goes to the kitchen, gets some water and whatnot, then he comes back, it's considered an entirely new majlis. Now, if he was to, again, he read the ayah, this would be a second time that he'll have to do a sajda tilawa for that same verse. And likewise, if he was to, now that he drank his water, he came back and he's sitting on his bed again, he reads the ayah another 10 times, still it's only one for that majlis, meaning 2 in total now, because of that first before getting the water and then after getting the water. Now, what would be considered, if he's still in the same room, okay, so what would be considered a majlis, how much, I think Ihtiram had asked this question, unfortunately he's not here right now, but he said he's traveling, so it's all good. if a person's like in the same room and they were to just get up and they wanted to walk around, stretch their legs while that Kif's kid is like practicing his ayah, and he was to walk, pace back and forth in the same room in his bedroom, and he was to read the ayah 15 times. It's not like each couple of steps is considered a different majlis because he's in the same room. It's all good. Now, what if you're not? No, okay. So based off of that, if he was to go to a different room now in the house and he read the ayah, he read the ayah 15 times in his room. Now he reads the ayah 15 times in like the living room. So you would have to do it once for the 15 that he read in his room, and then you would have to do it once for the 15 that he read in the living room. And in the Hashia, he mentioned the footnote. He mentions on page 110, 391. The footnote number 391 is that one must perform a separate prostration in a different verse of prostration if a different verse of prostration is recited, even if in the same sitting. Okay, that's a good point too. That if let's say a kid's going over his door, he's going over his amukhtar, whatever he has 30th, so he reads the entire 30th in his room in the same majlis, same sitting, but that's two different verses. Therefore, of course, this is pretty obvious, but that he would have to do two different sajdas because he read two different verses. Now, if he read, of course, just extending the logic, he read both the two different verses multiple times. Again, it's still only while in the same majlis, same sitting, he still only owes two. Legally, okay, this is important. Legally, sorry. Okay. Legally, a change of sitting can be actual or effective. Actual meaning like you leave the room and it's very obvious that it's a different sitting. Effective is that, well, we'll see here. An actual change of sitting occurs by moving an actual change of sitting occurs by moving three or more steps if one is outside in an open area. So not in a room. Let's just say if someone's outside, you're not going to say, oh, this entire field is considered one majlis. No, while two steps or less is not a change of sitting. An actual change also occurs by switching to a different room if one is indoors. Meaning if someone is in the same room, like I said, same room, the room could be pretty big, then as long as they're in that one room, that's considered one majlis, one space, one sitting. An actual change also occurs by switching to a different room if one is indoors or by leaving the mosque. One room or mosque, however, is considered one area whereby moving around does not affect one sitting. An effective change occurs by engaging in an unrelated action between recitations, like eating three or more bites of food, taking three or more sips of a drink, or speaking with three or more words. Less than that does not affect one sitting. Okay, so now, yeah, like if a kid he's in his room. He's reading his 30th juz. He's memorizing his. Excuse me. He's memorizing his Surah Al-Inshiqaq, and he's still just sitting on his bed. And then he decides to just go on his tablet or phone for like 15, 20 minutes. Now he's still saying like he hasn't moved an inch. He hasn't moved a single muscle. He's just been scrolling on his phone, and then he decides to start. Just needs a break. He decides to start reading again. Now it's considered a effectively it's now a new majlis because even though he hasn't moved, it's like a whole different setting now because there was that break between the recitations. So if he was to read another sajdat tilawa, he will have to perform. He would have to perform that sajda. If he was to read an ayah of sajdat tilawa, he'd have to perform another sajda. Let's see if there's anything else. Yeah. Okay. If for more detail, you could look at your copies of Ascent to Felicity. Any questions regarding that, though? It starts on page 108 of the book. Any questions? No? Okay, cool. Okay, we got that done. Oh, yeah. Go ahead, Sober. Is there like a So he says less than sorry me one sec. Let me just. An effective change occurs by engaging in an unrelated action between recitations, like eating 3 or more bites of food, taking 3 or more sips of a drink, or speaking with 3 or more words. Less than that does not affect one sitting, nor does engaging in remembrance of Allah Ta'ala, standing up, sitting down, or just remaining silent while seated, even if for a long time. So I think just the mere fact that this kid decides to like pull out his phone and use it, then that would be considered a different majlis, as opposed to using it in the sense that like as like I would say that like you might just like click the lock button to just check the time on your phone. I wouldn't. Yeah. I don't think that probably wouldn't be considered as using it something that would like break the majlis entirely, but actually unlocking using your finger to unlock your phone, maybe checking, not even responding to a text, but you're just like checking to see what someone said. Like that's you're actually using the phone for its purpose. So then at that point it'd probably be a different majlis. Yeah, no problem. Yeah, as soon as that phone unlocks, that's probably like that's probably the dividing line. Any other questions? Okay, so we're starting from the beginning of Surah Al-Buruj. The first note was the sababun nuzul, the reason for the revelation, or the reason for revelation of this surah. Can anyone remind me what the actually pretty long story is regarding the boy and the king, and how that kind of fits into this surah? You can give a very summarized version if you want. I know it can get pretty long. So the quick version is that, as we know, the boy, he was torn between if he should follow this magician guy that was employed by the king so he could take up the position of the next generation of being like the king's right hand man in this sort of kufr, shirky, sort of black magic stuff that the guy was involved in, or he had the option of following this Muslim monk, or if that's how you want to describe him, and just believing in Tawheed pretty much. What ended up happening is that the boy ended up believing in what the Muslim monk believed in, and he believed in the oneness of Allah Ta'ala, and the king did not like that, and he ended up persecuting the boy. But he was not able to kill him because of this protection that Allah Ta'ala had granted that boy. And eventually, after all the many botched attempts of trying to murder this boy, then the boy told the king that if you want to kill me, you have to do it in the name of Allah Ta'ala. And when there was this public execution happening, and then the king, when he drew the arrow back, or where one of his soldiers or whatever, and then they took the name of Allah Ta'ala, and then only then was the boy able to die. The entire village and the entire people accepted like Islam at that boy's hands, or boy's death, whatever. And because of that, they ended up being killed. So now that's the story, like the incident of the Ashab al-Ukhdud. These oppressors, these like these soldiers in the party of the king, they ended up digging these trenches, these ditches, in which they lit a fire, like a huge blazing fire inside the ditch, and then they threw the bodies of anyone who ended up believing in the boy. That's the incident of the Ashab al-Ukhdud. And how that ties in. Okay, let me get to this at the end, because the third point, there's only three points in that. What does the ending of the surah have to do with the beginning of the surah? Inshallah, we'll talk about that more there, and why that is. Second point was ayah number 3. وَشَاهِدٍ وَمَشْهُودٍ. What are the different interpretations of shahidi wa mashhud? Do you guys remember any? Hold on, let me just find the list. Okay, how about this? Let me ask you guys. I probably should have added this. What is the opinion of the majority? That's something that we should definitely know and have noted down. The majority was that the shahid is normal, and the mashhud is G, perfect. So, وَالْيَوْمِ الْمَوْعُودِ, Allah Ta'ala takes an oath by the Day of Judgment, and then شاهد ومشهود is the يوم الجمعة, ومشهود يوم عرفة. Because يوم الجمعة is something that we witness, it witnesses the people every day, and then once a week, sorry, and every single week, year round. Whereas mashhud is at Yawm Arafah, where people actually have to go there and witness it, and there's only select people that end up being present at that occasion. Some of the other opinions was mentioned quite a bit. Let me just mention the first couple. So عليه الأكثرون, that's so regarding the whole Yawm al-Jumu'ah, Yawm Arafah thing, that's what Ibn Kathir says, عليه الأكثرون. The majority of the scholars have opined for this position. As for some of the other opinions is that, this is where I had introduced, I probably should have put this at the end of the miscellaneous thing about القرآن يفسر بعضه بعضا. القرآن يفسر بعضه بعضا. That some portions of the Quran, they do tafsir of other portions of the Quran. So now if we look at this wording, mashahid wa mashhud, and we see where else Allah Ta'ala has used some similar wording, we find ذلك يوم مجموع له الناس وذلك يوم مشهود. That when Allah Ta'ala is describing the Day of Judgment, He says that that's the day that all people are gathered, and that is the day that is witnessed. So the mashhud is what? The Day of Judgment again, and the shahid would be مجموع له الناس, that all the people are the ones who are shahid for the Day of Judgment. Shahid, another shahid could be the جميع الخلق, all of creation, and the mashhud, as we know that every single thing does the tasbih of Allah Ta'ala, وَلَكِنْ لَا تَفْقَهُونَ تَسْبِيحَهُم. But Allah Ta'ala says that you don't understand, you're not able to, like your ears and your hearts, they don't witness, they don't hear the tasbih that is being done by all the creation. So all the creation is the shahid to the oneness of Allah Ta'ala. What is the mashhud? La ilaha illallah. Later on in the surah, وَاللَّهُ عَلَى كُلِّ شَيْءٍ شَهِيدٌ, that Allah Ta'ala is the one that's witnessing. And what is He witnessing? What's the mashhud? Of course, جَمِيعُ الْخَلْقِ, every single thing is under the microscope of Allah Ta'ala. Those are just a few. We had like 1, 2, 3, 9, 10, like a 10, 11, 12 we can mention, but so we can suffice with that. Okay. What does the ending of the surah have to do with the beginning of the surah? So the beginning of the surah talks about وَالسَّمَاءِ ذَاتِ الْبُرُوجِ, that Allah Ta'ala, He takes an oath by the sky which possesses these buruj, literally meaning like these strong fortresses, these strong castles, referring to the stars. And then Allah Ta'ala gets into this, the qissa, the story of the Ashab al-Ukhdud, and as we have mentioned just a few minutes ago, then Allah Ta'ala, He says that incident, the recollection of the incident of the Ashab al-Ukhdud pretty much ends at ayah number 11-ish, and then 10 and 11 kind of tie into the next part as well, so it's like a good, beautiful transition from ayat 13 to the end. إِنَّ بَطْشَ رَبِّكَ لَشَدِيدٌ إِنَّهُ هُوَ يُبْدِئُ وَيُعِيدُ وَهُوَ الْغَفُورُ الْوَدُودُ, and all the way to the end. And Allah Ta'ala talks about the Quran. Anyone remember as to what's like the connection between from ayat 12 onwards, and like what does that have anything to do with the Ashab al-Ukhdud? Okay, well then, I don't know, the cough seems to be getting worse, but I still don't feel sick, alhamdulillah. So just make dua for that, inshallah, it doesn't get any worse. So, okay, one thing that I had mentioned was, okay, Allah Ta'ala says, Inna batasha rabbika lashadid, that the attention has now been turned towards the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Inna batasha rabbika, right? That kaf means that it's saying you, your Lord. So, and who is the direct mukhatab, who is the direct audience of the Quran, of the wahi that's being revealed from Allah Ta'ala? It's Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. So, indeed, the seizing, batash, the seizing of your Lord, O Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, it's very severe. The shadid is very harsh. إِنَّهُ هُوَ يُبْدِئُ وَيُعِيدُ وَهُوَ الْغَفُورُ الْوَدُودُ. And Allah Ta'ala talks about His greatness, His grandeur, ذُو الْعَرْشِ الْمَجِيدُ فَعَالٌ لِمَا يُرِيدُ. هل أتاك حديث الجنود فرعون وثمود, that has this incident, has the story and the event of what took place with the armies of Fir'aun and Thamud? Are you not aware of that? Has that not come to you? وَلِلَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا فِي تَكْذِيبٍ وَاللَّهُ مِنْ وَرَائِهِمْ مُحِيطٌ. Rather, those who disbelieve are in complete denial of our wahy, of our religion, of anything and everything that's connected to it. And Allah Ta'ala is all-encompassing of them. بَلْ هُوَ قُرْآنٌ مَجِيدٌ فِي لَوْحٍ مَحْفُوظٍ. Rather, this is the magnificent Quran in deep preserved tablets. So I believe what we had mentioned here is that the connection between the two sides of this surah is that we're talking about in the first part, in the first half, about an oppressed Muslim people, who Allah Ta'ala says that the fact that you are oppressed, it's not going to go unrewarded. That you are going to due to the difficulty that you went through. Allah Ta'ala says, "Innal ladhina amanu wa amilu salihat lahum jannatun tajri min tahti al-anhar." You individuals who are burned alive, you will be granted jannatun tajri min tahti al-anhar. Whereas the disbelievers, what happens to them? فَلَهُمْ عَذَابُ جَهَنَّمْ وَلَهُمْ عَذَابُ الْحَرِيقِ. That they have the punishment of the hellfire and of the punishment of a burning and severe fire. Now, what does it have to do with the second half? Is that this surah is a Makki surah, and of course the Muslims at the time of Makkah were also in the same boat. They were also being oppressed, they were also being harassed, they were also being bullied, they were also being XYZ, all these different things. So it's a tasalli, a condolence, just a moral, to boost the morale of the Muslims, that just like how they were being oppressed and you're being oppressed, we will grant you Jannah, just like how we granted them Jannah, and the oppressors and the bullies that we dealt with back there, they're also going to be dealt with here. Now Allah Ta'ala, again, He calls to attention that the Fir'aun and Thamud and all these different armies that you guys have, definitely, that you all know that were much stronger than you, much better than you, much more physically capable, much more XYZ. Again, Allah Ta'ala completely decimated them, completely obliterated them. So, for what reason do you have this jur'ah? For what reason do you have this arrogance and boldness in front of Allah Ta'ala? One more thing that I had mentioned is that, how do I say this? Is that بَلْ هُوَ قُرْآنٌ مَجِيدٌ فِي لَوْحٍ مَحْفُوظٍ. That Allah Ta'ala talks about the sanctity and the divine nature of the message, meaning that you Muslims are the ones who are connected with that. So no matter what type of bullying that goes on, no matter what type of oppression goes on, you are still part of the Hizbullah. You're still part of the party of Allah Ta'ala. So no matter what people might say to you, no matter what people might do to you, you're still on the winning team. You have nothing to worry about. Okay, so that's Surah Al-Buruj. Surah Al-Tariq. Point number one was, okay, Allah Ta'ala in the first three ayahs, He takes an oath by the magnificent star, the Tariq. Then He says, "In kullu nafsin lamma alayha hafiz." This would have been a good question to add. What type of in is this? Ayah number 4 of Surah Al-Tariq. Yes, this is in Nafiya. And then the lamma would be, how would we translate the lamma? Yes, perfect. Harf al-istithna. So it's in is for nafi, to negate, and then the lamma is bima'na illa. So there is not an individual. Meaning that every single individual has a hafiz over them. There is not any individual except that he has a hafiz over him, referring to the angel min al-malaika, as it says. Number 2, right down here. Yeah, as we've discussed, كِرَامًا كَاتِبِينَ يَعْلَمُونَ مَا تَفْعَلُونَ. This is also the discussion, one of the miscellaneous discussions. We'll have to get through it today either way. But we said the significance of alayha here plays plays a role in the tafsir, can play a role in the translation as well. Are these good hafidhin? Okay, they're angels. Obviously, they're good. Okay, so are these hafidhin? Are they on our side or are they against us? And how? And whatever. But depending on your answer, how can you prove it from the lugha? How could you prove it from the actual wording of the ayah? It doesn't say, I'll give you a hint. In kullu nafsin lamma laha hafiz. It says alayha hafiz. And you guys are familiar with the narration of Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam, al-Qur'anu hujjatun laka aw alayk. Right? Arsalan, ringing any bells?
It's a negative connotation.
Yeah. It's talking about those angels which are like gunning for you, in the sense that these angels are there and they're gonna write down every single bad thing that a person has done, and they're gonna have that recorded down. They're gonna have that documented. Now, where do we get that from? From the hadith I just mentioned. The Quran is either a proof for you, laka or alayka, or it's a proof against you. So alayha hafiz, that these are angels that are like against you, quote unquote. Of course, they're doing both, but it's just we see that فَلْيَنْظُرْ الْإِنسَانُ مِمَّا خُلِقَ مِنْ مَاءٍ دَافِقٍ, that Allah Ta'ala is kind of he is addressing like the kafir skeptic of Ba'ath and all these different things. So he's like putting the fear of him inside that kafir's heart. What was I going to say? Yeah. So how do we know that? Sorry. Because the sila that is being used. So this is the discussion that we had. This is the last point in the miscellaneous thing, all the way at the bottom of the document, if you guys have it open, that sometimes a fi'l will have different meanings when it's used with different silas. So another example, so al-Qur'anu hujjatun laka aw alayka. Another example is, this is what we had gone through Hanzala, right? Da'a lahu, da'a ilayhi, or da'a alayhi. So you say, okay, let's start with ila. Da'awtu ilallahi. I called out to Allah Ta'ala. And it would be incorrect for a person to say like da'awt, okay, whatever. So da'awtu ilallahi, that a person is supplicating, they're actually asking Allah. Who are they asking for their needs, and who are they making dua towards? Who's that individual, who's that being that they're supplicating towards? Ilallahi. So that's ila, gives that meaning of who you are making supplication towards. You say da'awtu lahu, I made dua for barakah, for rahmah, for all these different good things, for li Arsalan, li Hamza, li Thawban. Okay, I Mustafa Ali I'm making dua for these individuals. If you say da'awtu alayhi, da'awtu ala zalimi, da'awtu ala all these different bad things. So da'awtu ala zalimin, I'm making bad dua, I'm making dua that Allah Ta'ala like takes them to task, that Allah Ta'ala punishes them, that Allah Ta'ala. So by using these different silas, you get these different meanings, although they're all with the usage of the same fi'l. So now when you open up Hanzala, you'll see, like, you go to whatever fi'l it may be, then you'll see like it'll give like a 1 or 2 English translations, and then like it'll be comma, and then in parentheses it'll mention like a ba or ala or lahu, or like any other of the huruf or anything like that, and then I'll mention like it's kind of similar, kind of, or even a completely different new translation. And then the reason it's set up like that is by it's saying that if you use this fi'l with the sila, it'll give this meaning that follows. Okay, so we're done with that. Okay, cool. You were at. Okay, anyways, but the actual point we were on was, okay, the first point in Surah Al-Tariq. What does ayah number 4 have to do with ayahs 1, 2, 3? It is because, just like how the star is able to penetrate like everything, like I think that example that I gave was if you're trying to sleep in on a Sunday morning, you have the pillow, you have the blanket over your head, that sunlight is still piercing through, right? If a person's sitting under the shade of a tree, there's still little pockets of sunlight that just pierce through. So if there's sunlight that's able to completely engulf people, no matter where they are, the sunlight just comes in somehow. Even if you're in you have your like a curtain across the entire window and there's no other openings, you can still tell it's daytime, right? If Allah Ta'ala is drawing a parable that this sunlight, the light of the star, it's able to pierce through anything and everything. So why is it so far-fetched to believe that we have angels who are able to be present at all times as well? Why is it so far-fetched to believe that the angels don't have this piercing eyesight where they're able to see you in all locations as well? That's the connection between ayah 4 through of talking about the angels immediately after talking about the Tariq, the star. Ayahs 11 to 13. What does the qasam have to do with the jawab al-qasam? السماء ذات الرجع والأرض ذات الصدع ذات الصدع إنه لقول فصل وما هو بالهزل. Okay, yeah, what does Allah Ta'ala takes an oath by? The sky, which ذات الرجع, بمعنى المطر, ذات المطر, that the sky which possesses rain, and the رجع from رجوع, comes back and forth, which is the water cycle, right? والأرض ذات الصدع, and the earth which possesses فيخرج منه النبات, the vegetation sprouts, like it breaks through from it. So that, I believe it means to like cleave, or something just like kind of pierce through, come to break through. So the vegetation that breaks out from the ground and grows. إنه لقول فصل وما هو بالهزل. Then Allah Ta'ala says that indeed this is the decisive and elaborate speech, and it's not a joke. وما هو بالهزل. So what does Quran have to do with water and vegetation? I think there's two reasons we mentioned. I want to just shout it out before I find. You said that?
I have one, I think one of them written down that mentioned that like the Quran, just as like the water, the rain comes down, that the Quran also came down from the heavens or from the sky, just like the rain, and then it just as the vegetation kind of sprouts out or lives in the ground, it's the same way that the Quran lives in the hearts of the people or the believers.
Beautiful. Perfect. That comes from the number one is comes from the sky, as you said, and it gives life to the dead earth. Meaning that, the first one is clear that the Quran is also comes down, and the second is that it's like how the water gives life to dead earth. This wahi gives life to the dead heart. What did I write here? So there's a division. I don't think I mentioned this, but I was written down. So there's a division in what the land brings out. Yani like some land will bring out like just grass. Some will bring out like flowers. Some will bring out like actual food to eat. Similarly, the Quran too does fasl of what kind of reaction comes out from the heart. إِنَّهُ لَقَوْلٌ فَصْلٌ. So just like how different earth, when it's given water, different things come out of it. So too does when the Quran enters, when a person hears it and they internalize it, then different reactions come out of it. Okay, that was Surah Al-Tariq, Surah Al-A'la. How does this surah connect to the end of the previous? How does Surah Al-A'la connect to the end of the previous? I think the first thing that we mentioned was that Allah Ta'ala is saying that مَهِّلِ الْكَافِرِينَ أَمْهِلْهُمْ رُوَيْدًا, like don't let it bother you. Just give them some time, give them some respite. So what should you be doing in place of trying to avenge yourselves against these oppressive bully Quraysh, mushrikeen Quraysh? What should you be doing? You should be engaging in tasbih. You should be engaging in dhikr. That's one thing. Is there anything else I mentioned? Okay. Ayah number 1. Okay, this is where we had quite a bit of discussions over here. That there was 3 or 4 rulings mentioned in Ma'arif al-Quran regarding just this first verse. Let me see if I can find it. Yeah, I'll just summarize. Looks like there's 3. Unless there's one on the next page. Yeah, there's 3. Scholars have said that anyone who recites the verse of Sabih Isma Rabbika al-A'la, they should also recite. Scholars have ruled that when anyone recites the verse Sabih Isma Rabbika al-A'la, it is commendable to say Subhana Rabbil A'la. So Subhana Rabbil A'la. This is a practice of many of the noble companions like Abdullah ibn Mas'ud, Abu Musa al-Ash'ari, Ibn Zubayr, Ibn Umar, Ibn Abbas, and Sayyidina Ibn Abbas. So that's one thing that we should do, that whenever we, not in Salah of course, but like outside of Salah, that when we're just reciting the surah, that we should say Subhana Rabbil A'la. The second thing is that Sayyidina Uqbah ibn Amr al-Juhani radiallahu anh, narrated that the Messenger of Allah, that when the Surah Al-A'la was revealed, the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam said, "Ya ij'aluha fi sujudikum." This is a narration in Abu Dawood, I believe, Abu Dawood, that we had read, that when فَسَبِّحْ بِاسْمِ رَبِّكَ الْعَظِيمِ, when that ayah is revealed, Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, he commanded that ij'aluha fi ruku'ikum. So that's why we say Subhana Rabbi al-Azim. And then when this verse is revealed, سَبِّحْ اسْمَ رَبِّكَ الْأَعْلَى, he says ij'aluha fi sujudikum. So سَبِّحْ اسْمَ رَبِّكَ الْأَعْلَى, the word tasbih means to pronounce the purity. Oh wait. Okay, you know what? Two birds in one. This is another. I was going to ask. One of the other points in the study guide was what is tasbih. So the word tasbih means to pronounce the purity, and sabbih isma rabbika signifies to honor the name of your Lord. When the name of Allah Ta'ala is pronounced, it should be done with utmost humility and respect. His name should be kept pure and free from anything that is unbecoming to His sublime status. Allah should be called by the names He Himself has stated or taught the Prophet ﷺ. It is not permitted to call Him by any other name. Ruling 3. We'll talk a little bit more about that in detail soon. The ruling 3 is that the whole name thing, which this is something that I had to look up. Okay, let me note that down right now, actually, so I don't forget. It's not working. Sorry. Shoot. Let me just write it on the first page of this thing. Names. So something that I myself had a question was exactly what names are fine and what names are not fine to. The masala is that, there's some names that you just straight up can't call people. If a person's name is Abdullah, you can't just shorten that and call the kid like Allah, right? Or if a person's name is Abdul Rahman, you can't just call him Rahman, which is very common, especially like in our Desi households. So what exactly is the dividing line between which names can you call someone, which are also the names of Allah Ta'ala, and which names can you not? So that's a question I myself had. Well, I know for the whole Rahman, you can't call someone Rahman. You can call him Abdul Rahman. But for the name Ar-Rahim, you could call someone Ar-Rahim, because that's Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam at the end of Surah At-Tawbah, he described as Allah Ta'ala calls Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam Rahim. So what's the dividing factor? What's the line? Is I have to look that up. Names of Allah being used for people. Discussion. Okay, inshallah. Okay. So in ruling number 3, I'll just read it quickly. Besides, it is also included in the above imperative that there are some names exclusively meant for Allah Ta'ala. So calling human beings with that name is therefore contrary to declaring the purity of Allah Ta'ala, and is therefore not permissible. He says, people are not particular about names like Abdul Rahman, Abdul Razak, Abdul Ghaffar, Abdul Qudus, and they call the people that have these names Rahman, Razak, Ghaffar, Qudus, and so on for short. People have gotten to the habit of shortening such names without realizing that they are committing a sin. So some commentators interpret the word ism does not mean name in this verse, rather it is referring to the that of Allah Ta'ala. This is actually the second thing that we're supposed to be talking about. So what is tasbih? So let's just kind of connected to that. That sabbih isma, some commentators interpret the word ism does not mean name in this verse. Instead, they say it is referring to the that or the being of Allah Ta'ala. According to the Arabic expression, this interpretation is not unlikely, and the Quran has used the word ism in that same sense also. Okay, whatever. That's on page 763 for those of you who are interested. Inshallah, you can read it there. Second point is that what is tasbih? If you look at Jalalain, and I'm sure if you look at many of the other like these types of commentaries on the Quran, like you look at Nasafi or something like that, then you'll probably find something very, very similar. Where he says that he's after the word sabbih, it says 8. Let me show you. How do I flip this? says after sabbih, it says, hey, nazzih rabbaka. So do tanzih of your Lord. Tanzih is, as I think I had defined earlier, or when we actually went over this, is that to do tanzih of Allah Ta'ala means to declare Him free from all defects. Declare Him free from all defects. So that is in the same meaning of tasbih. So when Allah Ta'ala says سَبِّحِ اسْمَ رَبِّكَ الْأَعْلَى, it's saying that your i'tiqad, your belief in Allah Ta'ala should be the proper i'tiqad. A person shouldn't think that Allah Ta'ala, like they might get involved in some anthropomorphic insinuations. They might think that Allah Ta'ala has a jism, a body. He has limbs and actual like flesh and bones and so on and so forth. That a person should have the proper i'tiqad in Allah Ta'ala. A person limits the qudra of Allah Ta'ala. That's another thing. A person limits the ability, like the power and like the things that he could do. Or a person, they limit his like ilm and all these different things, right? Meaning a person should have proper i'tiqad in Allah Ta'ala, which is why it's important to study. Okay. What is tasbih? Okay, tanzih. The significance of the absence of the okay, that's actually pretty much what we just said. Allah Ta'ala is not saying that. What are some other ayahs? وَسَبِّحْ بِاسْمِ رَبِّكَ I think I had some ayahs noted down here. Some ayahs. ونحن ونحن نسبح بحمدك. Allah Ta'ala says فَسَبِّحْ بِحَمْدِ رَبِّكَ, Surah Al-Nasr. That the sila of ba is used normally with this verb of sabbaha yusbihu tasbih. The translation for these ayahs would be something along the lines as use the names of your Lord, use the praises of your Lord to further praise Him, to like verbally declare in front of people with witnesses and whatnot, like you're actually using like names of Allah Ta'ala to admit that you believe that He is XYZ, that you call Him Ar-Rahman because you admit He is the one who's sublimely merciful. You call Him Al-Alim because you admit that He has knowledge of all things. You call Him Al-Basir, Al-Samir, all these different things because you're admitting, by saying those names, you're admitting to the fact that you are subservient to Him. When Allah Ta'ala He doesn't say, He's not you saying that here though, because of the absence of the ba. The absence of the ba gives the meaning of, like we were saying, سَبِّحِ اسْمَ رَبِّكَ الْأَعْلَى, as Mufti Shafi said as well, or in the translation, that it's referring to the that, the being of Allah Ta'ala. Do tasbih of the that of your Lord, of the being of your Lord. How do you do that? By making sure you have the proper understanding of who that being is. Make sense? Okay. Tasbih, what is tasbih? It's tanzih. Okay, we went that. Ayah number 7, concept of naskh. Concept of naskh. Okay, we have 12 minutes, and maybe we can save this one for last. How about that? I feel like this is probably going to be the longest one, so let's just try to fly through 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 more. Okay, so we'll get to this concept of naskh one last, inshallah. I let it interrupt. Okay, Surah Al-Ghashiyah. Ayahs 10 to 16. I just mentioned this in passing, but this is like the second or third time it's come up because, of course, like we're talking a lot about imaniyat in the first half of 30 juz, and Allah Ta'ala, He spends time, He talks about describes Jannah and Jahannam for us, right? So it's definitely worth going through. Sorry, let me turn my notifications off. It's definitely worth going through maybe some detail about like why are these things so special? Like why is it these specific things? Allah Ta'ala could have talked about anything in Jannah, right? But why is He specifically talking about these things that we see here? For example, ayah numbers 10 to 10 to 16, of Surah Al-Ghashiyah. Allah Ta'ala says, في جنة عالية لا تسمع فيها لاغية فيها عين جارية فيها سرر مرفوعة وأكواب موضوعة ونمارق مصفوفة وزرابي مبثوثة. Okay. Now the kicker would be if I ask you guys to do the tarjuma of these couple of ayats. Some difficult words here. Few, not too many. Okay, so we see في جنة عالية, that Allah Ta'ala says that the believers, the people that are granted admittance into paradise, they'll be in Ali, in elevated gardens. Jannah is when we first think. Well, obviously, when we hear the word Jannah, we think of like paradise, right? But Jannah is also used for just gardens. So paradise itself is just a really massive and like the best, unfathomable, beautiful garden. That's what it is. It's nature. في جنة عالية لا تسمع فيها لاغية. So it's elevated. So now if you think like, for example, person, let's say you had all the money in the world and you had to buy a house, where are you going to go? You're going to go somewhere that has a view, right? Who wants to live like, even if like whether it's in nature or it's in a city, whatever, the person's going to get the penthouse, which is always on the top floor. It's always the most expensive. Why? Because having the view is something that is very appealing to experience to the human being, that when you're like, you're able to see all these different things around you, is breathtaking. It's absolutely marvelous. لا تسمع فيها لاغية. Now, if you're buying, you have a couple of options in front of you, and you're trying to buy a house, and they're all like with aliyah, okay, but one of them is in a like really loud neighborhood. One of them is, as soon as you open up your windows in your beautiful penthouse and just to look at this, like the mountains or the sunset or whatever, and all you hear is like honking cars, and you see all this smoke being blown into your house, you're gonna be like, all right, let's see if we can find somewhere else to live, right? So لا تسمع فيها لاغية, that a person won't hear anything useless. And of course, I mean, nothing useless is going to be going on. That person's not going to be bothered by like, people being outside on like outside of his porch or outside on the street, just like making a bunch of random noise, like some kids out. Sometimes like it just gets mad annoying when there's people outside and you're just trying to chill at home. And like you're trying to rest, you're just trying to take a break and whatnot, and then people are just making a lot of noise outside. So Allah Ta'ala is saying that your estate in Jannah, there's not going to be like people outside of, although your property is beautiful, but right along the edge is something that could completely ruin like the ambiance that you've set up in your area. لا تسمعوا فيها لاغية. We also said that this is for Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam as well. لا تسمعوا, أنت, the damir that is anta, that you, O Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam, won't hear any لاغية, won't hear anything useless. Meaning that, of course, Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam, he's been hearing all this trash talk from these bullies of the kuffar. He's been hearing all this bakwas from them. Now he's saying that you will be in Jannah, O Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam, and you won't hear anything like that. Additionally, last thing I'll mention about this is that لا تسمع فيها لاغية indicates towards relationships as well. That you might have the beautiful house, you might have the amazing huge lawn, you might have anything and everything you can think of, but like imagine you have all of that. Okay, not you. Imagine there's a person that has all of that, yet like the relationship, like this, him and his wife just have a terrible relationship. They say mean things to each other. Him and his kids just don't talk to each other anymore. There's all this laghiyah that goes on between them. So it indicates that the relationships too will also be fine between the people that are living on this beautiful estate. فيها عين جارية. Now, let's just go back to the whole real estate analogy thing again. That if you're gonna buy a property, you're gonna like 9 times out of 10, you're gonna if you got all the money in the world, where are you gonna go? You're gonna have an ocean. You're gonna have a beachfront property, right? You're gonna have like something that's like really high up, something in the mountains that's overlooking the beach. Like I think in California, like those there's just those like houses that are like half off a cliff, and they're just like hanging there, just suspended in there, and they're just overlooking the Pacific. Absolutely, and those are, of course, they bring in top dollar. فيها سرر مرفوعة. Oh, فيها عين جارية. Flowing water, right? Meaning that it's like you have your massive, beautiful house that's already elevated, and then there's just jariya, these running water. It's like a waterfall, pretty much, on your estate. فيها سرر مرفوعة. That was ayah number 13. There are raised surur. We went into like why this is more couches as opposed to beds, as normally translated today. Surur is used for the words sarir, used for beds, but it's more appropriate for it to be couches here. Why? Because of course for the Arab nomad, who's constantly traveling, it's not like he's lugging around furniture from place to place, right? The guy that's living in the desert, he just has like 2 things. He has a pillow. He has like a toothbrush, and he has like a lota, right? Which he uses like everything for. He uses as a lota, uses as his cup to drink water from, uses as like a plate to eat food from. It's like everything, right? He uses it for everything. So to have a couch for the Arab nomad would symbolize that furniture means I'm now settled. I now have like I'm not worried about just where am I getting my next meal from. I'm not worried about going to the constant hustle and bustle of going back and forth between like trying to get some money, trying to get some food and stuff like that. So fiha surrun marfu'a, again raised, because so the first thing is that it signifies like being established, being like being settled. And marfu'a, again, it's like you already have your amazing house, you already have your elevated house which oversees the view, but on top of that, it's like it would like it kind of shows the it shows the even though like for example what's like you go to your boss's office and he has like his chair, like this $1,000 chair, nice leather, goes back all the way, and then you have like two little like lawn chairs like right in front of his desk that are just like 6 inches lower than his, right? Because it shows like the authority that the person on that side of the desk have. Okay, well, akwab, a bad example. I'm sorry, but you guys get the point. Akwab mawdu'a, and there's placed cups. Akwab, placed cups. Right? It's like the smallest detail, right? Like out of everything that Allah Ta'ala could mention, He mentions there's going to be placed cups. Why? I didn't hear this anywhere. This is just from my understanding. Is that mawdu'a is isim maf'ul. Isim maf'ul means that there's a fa'il behind it, correct? So this down to the smallest detail, the cup itself will be placed so you're enjoying that you don't even have to worry about any of the housework. Like I think I mentioned something ajib. I was just like, a person has this amazing house. They have this beautiful house, all these different rooms, all this different property, all this this incredible lawn. Now he starts thinking that okay, it's going to be very, very difficult to take care of. How am I going to be mowing this lawn? I'm going to have to spend like 25 hours a day mowing this lawn that I have. I'm going to have to, like, how am I supposed to be cleaning all these rooms, dusting all these things? But you see, that smallest thing, a cup for your enjoyment has been placed by the servants of that Allah Ta'ala has assigned for the people of Jannah, meaning that everything is going to be taken care of in terms of like chores, pretty much. وَنَمَارِقُ مَصْفُوفَةٌ وَزَرَابِيُّ مَبَثُوثَةٌ. Number 15 and 16, Allah Ta'ala says, and there's like cushions and pillows that are masfuf, that are put in the safs, they're arranged out, وَزَرَابِيُّ مَبَثُوثَةٌ, and laid out carpets. So again, just adding to the like the comfort and the scene. Okay, we'll just stop there. I went quite a bit of time there. Well, my point was that Allah Ta'ala specifically mentions these things. Why? Because these are just things that people like urge for. Like people like really, really want these things, right? Like you grow older and these are the things that people just want to be like settle down. They want to be make sure that everything's taken care of. They want to be able to provide for all these different not just the basic necessities, but people want to go above and beyond for their families. So this is what Allah Ta'ala is promising us as our estates in Jannah. May Allah Ta'ala take us there. Connection between ayah numbers 20 and 21. كيف سطحت فذكر إنما أنت مذكر. Okay, this is deep. We got 2 minutes. Just save it. We still have to talk about nasakh. Okay, let's just go. I'll try to get as much done before 9, inshallah. So, so we said that this whole هل أتاك حديث الغاشية has the news not come to you regarding the al-ghashiyah, regarding the thing that's going to overcome everything, i.e. qiyamah. So the day of judgment is obviously going to take over everything, right? It's going to just stop the entire world pretty much. Everyone's going to be focused on this one thing, which is the al-ghashiyah, qiyamah. So this surah, right up from the outset, it's reminding us about something. It's reminding us about something. Now what does Allah Ta'ala say? وَإِلَى الْأَرْضِ كَيْفَ سُطِحَتْ. Satah, it's used in Arabic for a roof, right? So now why is the ground, which is below us, being described as a roof? Why? Because one day we're all going to, every single person, we're all going to be buried under it. And therefore, it becomes our roof. So now, what is the connection between وَإِلَى الْأَرْضِ كَيْفَ سُطِحَتْ and فَذَكِّرْ إِنَّمَا أَنْتَ مُذَكِّرْ? Because this, like we said, this surah is to serve as a reminder of what the future entails, which is al-ghashiyah, which is death as well, as seen here. وَإِلَى الْأَرْضِ كَيْفَ سُطِحَتْ, and we see that right here. فَذَكِّرْ إِنَّمَا أَنْتَ مُذَكِّرْ. Sorry. فَذَكِّرْ إِنَّمَا أَنْتَ مُذَكِّرْ. So we see that the two main things that Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam is calling our attention toward is that you're going to die, and after he does, it doesn't stop there. It's going to be something happening, which in this surah it's called al-ghashiyah, but of course we know it by its many other names as well. That makes sense? Okay, so there's no questions. We can stop here, inshallah. We just have the miscellaneous thing, which we did this. We did that. Okay, yeah, like 2-3 minute miscellaneous things, and then the concept of nas, which I don't think will take too long, considering that like it's not like a huge thing that we're gonna have to like defend or. I mean, you guys are. It's not. I don't know if you guys want to talk about it in detail. We can, inshallah, but I don't think we need to spend too much time on it. Is my point. Inshallah. So, any questions? No. Okay, great. Please just keep me in your du'as, inshallah, for my throat to get better. God, sorry. I'll see you guys later, inshallah. Sorry. Assalamu alaikum. Yeah.